Good morning. Welcome to FM Corner. Wanted to let you know that FM Corner is sponsored by Windy City Equipment. Certainly appreciate them continuing to allow me to do this FM podcast with you folks. Today on our podcast is someone I've known for quite some time, an industry veteran in the facilities world and several others, Scott Hoffmann. We're going to talk to Scott today, kind of about career, kind of about future, what he's doing. So, Scott, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the podcast today.
Danny, I'm absolutely honored. Thank you so much. And also congratulations on your recent retirement, and well-deserved, my friend.
Thank you. I'm learning how to be an old guy quickly.
Don't ever do that, though. Always lead with your heart. You got a great heart, Danny.
Thank you, sir. Let's get started here. We'll talk a little bit about your career, kind of how it started to where you are now.
Oh, wow. That's yeah. So, very non-traditional career in that if you look at my LinkedIn profile, I've been all over the spectrum, Danny. So I started my career out in the residential property management space for Trammell Crow Residential. They turned into a REIT and became Avalon Bay. I had some experience in commercial and retail facility management as well. Then I got involved in IT because simply as a property manager, don't make a lot of money on the residential side. And I had a bunch of friends and younger people that I was hiring that were coming into the space with their MCSE and making great money, six-figure incomes back in the 90s. So I switched into IT, and I've pretty much been involved in either sales or some form of IT since that time. So when I was I want to state this because it's so important to have mentors in your life. And one of my mentors, whom I still stay in touch with, was my manager back when I had my very first sales job. And he had to put me on a PIP, Danny. And I tell you what, it changed my outlook for sales. And I really focused and listened to what my mentor had to say. And I went on to be the Mid-Atlantic top leasing agent for Trammell Crow Residential Services, just a short 1 year later. So listen to your mentors. That's the biggest thing I want to get across as I'm answering some of these questions with you this morning is, mentors have helped me tremendously. So certainly take advantage of that, where you can. It's been beneficial to me for sure. Then, I got kind of stuck in the financial management, finance industry. And then the 2008 and 2009 financial crisis struck right at the heart of when I started up my own software company. We had created a platform for loan origination for mortgage bankers and brokers and had, angel funding ready to launch. And then the 2009, sledgehammer came down and the angel investors pulled their money. So unfortunately that went away very quickly. Yeah. And then because of that experience, I decided to go back to school and finish my undergrad. Another one of my mentors came into my life and said, hey, Scott, you should go to school and get your MBA. Like, that'd be great, but I got to finish my undergrad. He's like, let me make some calls, Scott. So he made some calls on my behalf, got me in front of the Dean of Admissions at the University of Denver, as well as CSU. I got accepted to both. Went to my employer at the time, which was a BPO provider in the financial services space. Unfortunately, they were like, yeah, no, we're not going to give you off every other Friday to complete your schooling, and we're not going to pay for it, by the way. So at 40 years old, I went back to school and got my MBA. I was blessed by God. Didn't have to finish my undergrad and was put on, academic probation for the first semester and cleared that obstacle, and then graduated in 2011. Then I went to work because I had so much experience in the commercial and residential property management space, and I wanted to stay in that services side of the business and wanted to focus on the facility maintenance side. So I went to work with one of my classmates at Set Point Systems here in Denver, Colorado. They're an HVAC controls contractor, and was selling services for them. Quickly got promoted to branch manager out in Minnesota, opened up their branch there. And then Delta Controls came calling and asked me to come on board to run their Western Regional Sales Group and manage about 50 partners for them. So that's where I gained a tremendous amount of insight into the FM space, into HVAC and MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, working with various contractors and installing, new construction controls as well as retrofits. And then working with all of those partners at Delta Controls really exposed me to what it was like running a business in the FM space, in the FM industry. And then Delta Controls launched Copper Tree Analytics, which is an artificial intelligence platform that you bolt on top of the HVAC control system. And that has just exploded. They were acquired, Delta Controls got acquired by Delta Electronics. Then I got recruited to be part of the executive leadership team at a HVAC MRO distribution company, Relevant Solutions, and stayed there for a while. Then decided I wanted to open up my own shop, called up a buddy, and he was like, hey, yeah, I'm expanding my business. Why don't we put together a business plan? I did that. That was in the recruiting space. So again, starting out, I'm all over the place, Danny, with my career, but that certainly helps me in the interviewing process when I'm hiring out a team. Having that recruiting experience, it really comes in handy and valuable for me. But going through that experience, I realized very quickly that was not my calling. So I had some conversations earlier on with Corrigo and had gotten a call back and was recruited to come in to head up their service provider vertical within Corrigo. So when I got there, we were about the 5th out of 7 industry verticals, and from a revenue perspective. And within a short 24 months, we had that as the number 1 vertical out of the 7. And loved that experience. I spent 5 years there, learned a tremendous amount. Still stay in touch with all the people at Corrigo, wonderful people at JLL. And then I went to work for a startup. Again, entrepreneurial, that always comes out in me. I love to take risks. And so I went to work for a company called Space Tags, which is a augmented and virtual reality software platform that allows you to virtually tag your piece of equipment simply from your phone, and then you can add whatever information you want to that. So think about, again, who is retiring and aging out of our industries and who's coming in, and what do they want to do? They want to use technology. They want to leverage technology. So, with that, I would love to transition my career back into, software in some shape, form, or capacity that is aiding and helping our facility management or facility maintenance companies better run their organizations and have the data that they truly need at their fingertips to help them make those decisions.
Sure. And that's even more important today because one of the things I think COVID did kind of changed the perspective of a facility manager and their job. I was old school. I traveled every week. I went to buildings and, I showed people standing on site, here's why you have a drainage problem. Look at this, look at that. When COVID came and people had to start staying at home all the time and work from home and remote became a bigger deal and they couldn't travel. And then they figured out they didn't want to travel. Everything's done, on the screen, over their computer, over their phone. So you're exactly right. It's always interesting to listen to people talk about careers. I know in the facility side of the business, when I talk to someone who's a facility manager, I have yet to find somebody that ever said, "Hey, I wanted to be a facility manager." Nobody did that. You were in the right place at the right time, and evidently someone usually saw something in you that thought you had a chance, and then you jumped in and figured it out. So it's very interesting to hear the different roles and stuff that you played, that all kind of help each other. Like you spoke about recruiting and talking to people, and so all those things are really valuable. I want to ask a question about your time at Corrigo and JLL. It's kind of where you and I kind of met.
Yep.
And we have a mutual friend there, Terry Byerly, who's been a dear friend for years and years. But
Love Terry.
He's great.
Yeah.
How did Corrigo and JLL impact the facility side of the restaurant facilities, I guess, in particular?
Yeah, on the Corrigo, that's probably where they have a lot of their past strength is in that restaurant space. They've built a great platform for that space, and they can very quickly deploy that to, a portfolio of 10 restaurants or 5,000 restaurants pretty seamlessly. So some of the things that Corrigo has added, the biggest thing I think is them adding the CAB, the Corrigo Advisory Board. They really wanted to listen to what was the FM personnel experiencing throughout the entire IFM spectrum. So from janitorial services to landscaping to roofing to internal, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, all of those things, Corrigo can provide that application for any one of those trades. The other beauty that we helped enhance with Corrigo is their vendor network. So we made it easier for those vendors to come on board. We made it easier to target work for those vendors through some found work capabilities at Corrigo, and then providing FM services. So JLL, that's what they do. They manage properties. So they understand that FM side. They also provide for facility maintenance companies or IFM providers that don't necessarily have the expertise to manage all that back end. They can manage that for you. So Corrigo does an excellent job there. They've got a lot of very knowledgeable people. Mary is wonderful, who heads up their services at Corrigo. So definitely, if you're on that platform, I'd reach out to them and talk to them about that. A couple of other things that we did was, we revamped the go-to-market strategy for the service provider vertical. I mentioned previously that the service provider vertical was about 5th out of 7 verticals from a revenue perspective. Right. And within 24 months, because of the changes that we helped implement, it was the number 1 revenue producing vertical within Corrigo in that 24 months. So Some of the other things that they're working on that I'd like to think I had, some voice in bringing these to the table. Some schedule optimization, which I believe is going to be released this year. So it'll help that scheduler put the right person on that job that's qualified to complete it the first time. And that first time fix is huge in the FM space. Look, as a building owner, give your team, and that also includes any FM that you're hiring, give them the access and give them the knowledge and information that they need. And if you have a system like Corrigo, all of that is at their fingertips. There are many other, good CMMS platforms or work order management platforms out there, but make sure you leverage that and make sure you leverage the team, because that team at Corrigo, they've got hundreds of combined years of experience in the space. Lean on them and leverage that fact to help you become more efficient and effective.
Sure. That's great. And I'm thinking about one of the factors you said there about making sure you get the right person to the job. There's nothing worse than when I was on the facility side and even on the service side, well, we sent a tech. Well, when the tech got there, it's a refrigeration problem. And he said, well, I only do hot side. Well, why'd you send him? Well, he's the only guy we could send. Well, I'd rather wait and get the right guy to come than send me a guy who basically is telling me he doesn't know the problem. It's like, I need a plumber, but I call an electrician. That doesn't make sense. It's just, and
Yep.
that happens all the time. That's great stuff. You spoke about mentoring a minute ago. You've done lots of that in your career. Why quickly is that important to you?
Man, mentoring is so important. I take a lot of personal responsibility and pride in relaying the information that has been bestowed and entrusted in me from my mentors and from other people, that I've had the opportunity, like yourself, to work with. I mean, the knowledge that a mentor brings to the table is invaluable in your career. And with the young people that I typically mentor, I challenge them and I encourage them to have at least 3 mentors in their life. And those mentors are, think about your career. Where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years from now? So you'd like to have a mentor. You could have more than one, but someone that's in that future role that you want to achieve. And the reason is pretty obvious. They can be that mentor to help guide you through things that, hey, if you do this, it's probably going to be recognized and it's going to be a positive, good thing. But if you go down this path, that's probably not a good choice. So they can help you and guide you and be that coach to help you land that next future role. The second mentor they want to have in their life is someone at their peer level. Someone that they can call, they can bounce ideas off of, someone that might benefit in partnering with them, but someone that's at their level, that has the same motivation, the same time frame in where they see themselves in the next 3 to 5 years. That really helps to have that peer to bounce those ideas off of. And then the third mentor that I always recommend is, because I'm a believer, since I'm a kinesthetic learner, I'm a believer that if you watch it, do it, and teach it, and that follows kind of this philosophy, right? Someone in your future, someone in your present, and someone in your past. And that person in the past, that's just someone that is not yet in your role, but they're aiming for and they want to be in your role. So now you have that opportunity to bring up, to coach and mentor that young individual to basically fulfill your role, whether that's at your organization or that's at another organization. Because look, until the organization has someone that can fill your shoes, you're not getting promoted. That's just the fact sometimes, right? You can have all of this great skill, but the company relies on your role so much that sometimes you get held back a little bit. So if you can help your organization train and bring that next person up that can slide into or get promoted into your shoes, that opens you up and elevates you. Because look, people want to work with other people that are successful.
Sure.
That's absolutely a fact. Yeah.
No, it's great. And I just went to a retirement thing that some friends of mine threw a couple of weeks ago. And my first boss, and actually one of my mentors at Ruby Tuesday, was 81 years old, came. And I was over the moon with the fact that he came after all these years. And they kind of went around the room and everybody kind of talked and stuff. And when he got to him, he said, his nickname, he just called me DK. For years, he's always called me DK. And he said, I didn't tell DK what to do. That never would work. He said, I let him go. And he did what he did. He said, my job was to kind of keep him on the boundary, keep him on the reservation, make sure, he didn't stray, but let him, I didn't try to tell him how to do his job. He said, what I taught him how to do was how to play the corporate game. And he said, because Ruby Tuesday was a small company and you just kind of ran around, and then all of a sudden we got bought, and, then you got to play the corporate game. He said, I taught him how to play corporate because that was the part he needed. I didn't try to teach him how to do the job, and he's exactly right, and taught. So
Yep.
what you learn from people is several different things, but it's all critically important in your growth. It really is.
Absolutely. And Danny, you hit the nail on the head there, because the understanding the culture and understanding who you are as an individual, and will you fit into that culture, be honest with yourself, because culture drives the politics within that organization. So
Sure.
definitely check out the culture, definitely understand it, learn how to play that game, because I'll be honest with you, Danny, I don't play that game very well. And that's probably been the thing that's held me back the most in my career, is not playing the politics correctly. So great advice, Danny.
It is tough, and because what happens to you, and I'm a huge believer of being true to yourself. Be what you are, and be that way all the time. And that's very difficult in a corporate environment sometimes, because you kind of feel, well, I'm not being true to myself because of how I'm having to participate or play the game, and you kind of have to learn how to manage that piece. But what you learn from other people is huge.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't even know how you kind of help people. I at my last RIPA in February was in Vegas, and a couple of people come up and said, years ago when I joined RIPA, you called me and you talked to me about RIPA and what it was about and so on and so forth. And I honestly didn't even remember. I'd forgotten, and they're like, that made a huge difference that, hey, if you got questions, just call. But sometimes it's just little things. It's nothing huge. It's just opening yourself up to people, I think is sometimes can be, very good, very good.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You mentioned your mentors. Do you want to give a shout out to one or two that were huge for you?
If you don't mind, I got three that I'll mention real quick. So that first manager that I had, Mark Dewey, he's now retired, worked in property management his entire career, bar none, the best manager that I ever had, because he leveraged, and what I saw was he leveraged every single employee's strength. He didn't focus on the weakness. He focused on their strength. So that was amazing. The second mentor was a gentleman by the name of B. Passan, and he worked in the financial services industry for a long time. He's been an executive. He's owned various different companies. He actually helped get me into the Colorado State University Executive MBA program. So huge shout out to B, great guy. And then my last and final mentor I'd like to mention is a former business partner and a great man of God. His name is Rodney Laughlin. Excuse me. And he is the author of the Readable Bible. So if you're looking for a different version of a Bible to pick up, the Readable Bible by Rodney Laughlin is amazing. So definitely check that out.
Outstanding. All those folks, and everybody has them. And if you don't, you should. But those mentors and those people that you can go to, that you're going to get the truth. Don't tell me what I want to hear. Tell me what I need to hear. And if that's hard, that's fine. I'm a big boy. I can hear it, and because I know it's coming from a space of trying to help me.
And one more person I'll mention, Danny. Sorry to cut you off. John Stevenson was my VP at Corrigo, and John was great because he was never overbearing. I always work best if you just give me some guardrails and let me go do my thing. But the one thing that Stevenson shared with me that I'll always remember is words have meaning. And that was one of John's sayings. So words have meaning. So choose your words wisely, choose them carefully, and understand the impact that your words might have as you're talking to other people.
Sure.
Yep.
Sure. Absolutely. Great points. Speak, if you will, for a second on as you search for that next new opportunity and what are you going to do quickly, but the importance of your contact, keeping bridges open, how I went through the very same thing. And I know how important it was to, not ever burn the bridge as best you could in your career and how to reach out with contact people and get help, as you search for the opportunity.
Absolutely. And, again, thank you, Danny, for having me on your show, your podcast.
Sure.
Certainly appreciate it. But staying in touch with your network, building yourself and building your value within your network. That's why it's so important. If you're in this space, it's okay to talk to people over here in this space, right?
Sure.
Because what they're dealing with and what you're dealing with are very similar. It just has a slightly different feeling over here because maybe they're dealing with a different set of problems than the individuals that are dealing with it over here. So stay in touch with your network. You have ancillary or adjacent skills that you might be able to leverage that people see in you that you don't yet see in yourself. So leverage that network. Find those people, as you mentioned, that can be honest with you and give you honest feedback about what they've experienced in working with you or what they've experienced in dealing with a solution like what you currently sell or what you want to sell. So I've done again, my career expands a lot of different fields and industries, but the one place that I'm passionate about is helping people with their data. Data is an absolute gold mine, and there's so much amazing data, but it's siloed, it's disparate, it's stuck over here, and you can't access it when you're in this system. But think if you could bring all of that data into a data lake and then query that data and using agentic AI and using other automation tools to go through that data and uncover really important information that might take your company from that good company to that great company. That's where I have passion. That's where I get excited. I get to leverage some of the skills that I learned in my MBA and working with owners and working with C-suite individuals to really help them hone that data and to make their company more valuable. Well, what does that do? That allows them to hire more people, right? That allows them to spread that wealth and to spread that experience amongst other people. So that's where I'm looking to make an impact, somewhere in the SaaS world or the software world that is related to the facility management and or construction space.
Got it. Great point. Great point.
One more thing. I mentioned I went through the recruiting piece, right? And I had always been told, if you're looking for a VP level position or higher, you probably shouldn't use the open to work through LinkedIn. It doesn't send the right message. I've been told every excuse under the sun.
Right.
Let me just say this. When I made the decision to put it out there and create that post, one of the best things I've ever done, excuse me, that single post got me 8 conversations that week.
That's awesome.
Yep. And I've had additional conversations, come in. I've had over 30 people in my network that have reposted that to their networks. So if you're contemplating or you're hesitating at all, I would encourage you, absolutely do it, post it. If you got some questions, call me, reach out to me. I'm happy to walk you through that and help you out in any way that I can.
That's funny. When I was looking for the opportunity before I went to work for Windy City, I did podcasts with Josh Solon, who's CEO. We'd never met, never. I did one when COVID first hit
Yep.
and what that was like in the industry. And then I ended up losing the job that I had because of COVID,
Yeah.
because of cuts that were made. And I did a second podcast with him, and I talked about what you're talking about now and how you use your network and go about it. And that's what ultimately one of the things that landed me the opportunity to work with them that I did for 5 years until I retired, because of just, I guess, the way I answered the questions and went through and described what was going on, and facing it with reality. Just, anytime a job change happens or something like
Yep.
that, it's tough. It's tough. But there's reasons behind it, and you have to understand what those reasons are, and then you move forward. It's kind of, it's how business works. So that's great,
Yep.
your perspective on that. I really appreciate that. And I'm glad people will too, because I've heard the same things, of what you should do and what you shouldn't do. There is no right. Figure out what you think is right and go do it.
Do what's right for you. Absolutely, Danny.
There you go. Speak real quick on, and it just doesn't matter the industry, but the three or four things usually come up. Kind of give me three quick things a successful person needs to have to be in this type of industry.
Yeah, and I thought about that quite a bit, and I would say it's grit, and I'll define that. I would say that it's curiosity and persistence in that curiosity. And I would say having a winning attitude, being positive, right? So what do I mean by grit? You got to be willing to roll up your sleeves and get into this with your prospective customers to understand their problems. I tell, new salespeople in this space, if you're selling some sort of software or service to an FM provider, ask them if you can do a ride along with one of their techs, or if you can go to one of their customer sites and witness the service or the product or whatever it is that you're selling, witness that product in action or witness that service in action. It is invaluable, especially if you are new to the industry or the space. Again, get gritty, get in there, don't take no for an answer. Your customers are going to tell you no a lot. You got to have some thick skin and get used to that, but understand through a Socratic questioning method how you can turn that no into a yes, because they may have the wrong information. And that, to me, is grit, getting in there and understanding things. The curiosity piece, in my humble opinion, being curious creates a lot of things. It removes that barrier of, I don't trust you, because you're not motivated to sell them something. You're motivated to help understand their problem. Understand their problem. Be curious about that. One of the things that I always talk about is the 3 levels of why. When you ask someone, if they don't know you, you ask them a question, you're not getting the straight answer. You got to dig into that answer and uncover where the real pain or where the real problem lies. Mm-hmm. And when they fully trust you, they'll share that with you. If you remain curious about their problem and you show them that you want to help them with their problem, they're going to share information with you. You're going to build trust. And that's important in that sales aspect. The winning attitude, you got to remain positive about things. And that's with, your internal coworkers. Remember that politics piece that we talked about? Sure. You got to remain positive. Find the good in everyone. And I'll give another shout out to John Stevenson at Corrigo. John always found the good in someone, right? So have that attitude internally with your own team as well as your external, potential customers.
Sure. That's great. I can remember telling my team at Ruby's as they would complain about a manager or somebody that called and didn't have all the information and they just want it done. And so, I'm like, if life was easy and every restaurant manager could fix their own stuff, we wouldn't have a job and we wouldn't be sitting here. The reason they're calling us is they need help.
Yep.
And our job is to try to help them. And some are better prepared than others. And those are teaching moments that you can do down the road. But today, you got to fix this problem. And how you define a successful day in facilities is, first of all, acknowledge the fact that you will never do it fast enough, quick enough, cheap enough. Never will.
Yep. Nope.
Never. So you're going to have what is looked at losses because you didn't do what they needed in a particular time frame. Okay, that chalk it up. What you search for is that one person every day, I made their life better. I fixed something, got somebody to go fix it. I delivered it earlier than I promised, because that's always the key. It'll be done by Thursday and you do it by Wednesday and you're a hero. And
Yep.
Wednesday was your deadline all along. You just never told them that.
But that's important, Danny. That you just hit on something really important. Control the expectation that you want. And that's through communication, right?
I did a presentation in Chicago a few weeks ago to a third-party facility company. And I said, if you don't hear any of my other points, listen to this one. And I said, don't get boxed in by your customer. And what I mean is that facility person who goes the other end of the phone says, you're going to be there today, right? Today, before 5 o'clock, you're going to be there today. And this goes on for 20 minutes and they're just browbeating you to death until that point that you say yes. I said, I'm telling you that because I spent 35 years being that guy. That's what I did. I'm pushing. Yep. And if you tell me, well, I've got to go do a Cracker Barrel, I don't care. I don't work for Cracker Barrel. I work for Ruby Tuesday. I want you here, blah, 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 blah. And I said, I did all that. At the end of the day, what I really cared about was I wanted that person on the other end of the phone to go, Danny, stop. Pay attention. We're not coming today. We can't. You've got to figure out how to deal with it. That's what I wanted. But I'm never going to say that to you. But I respected that more than anything else. That guy just picked up the phone and said, hey, listen up for a minute. Quit yelling. We're not coming. Here's why. We'll be there tomorrow. Okay, got it. But unless you ever hear that, you just keep pushing, And I said, I understand the narrative. If you tell the customer no, they'll leave. Well, if you promise the customer what you can't deliver, they're going to leave anyway. So you got a better chance.
And there's a good chance, because we've dealt with it enough, if you go out and do the work for that job, you might not get paid for it.
Exactly right. You're exactly right.
Right? Because they weren't happy from the very get-go that you didn't come out when they wanted you to be there, but yet you promise you'd be there the very next day as soon as they open, you get the problem knocked out, you fulfilled your end, and now you're struggling to get paid for it. So There's an industry issue there as well, Danny.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, or they get mad at you and they call 3 other companies to come out and none of them can be there for 5 days. And you get that humble phone call, calls back, goes, hey, tomorrow would be great. Thanks. At the end of the day, it's just part of the business, but it's just learning to, like I said, focus on helping one person every day and make somebody better, and if you can do that, that's the life of a facility manager, and you will do well over time. My last question here is kind of what's your go-to saying, Scott, or thought that you kind of keeps you grounded?
Yeah, my go-to saying, and I mentioned it, I'm going to bring up 2 things. I have a famous quote from a movie that, I just think there's a lot of great things in the movie, but it's look inside yourself. You are more than what you have become. And that's from The Lion King. Great movie. And there's a lot of good quotes in there. But again, look inside yourself. You are more than what you have become. And then my go-to saying, especially in that mentoring piece, and I mentioned it previously, is the 3 levels of why. And what do I mean by that? So I alluded to it a little bit earlier. It's a trust thing. And in sales, if you don't have curiosity and you don't have trust with your customer or your potential customer, you're not getting that sale. I'll tell you right now, you're not going to get that sale, right? So when you're asking your questions and you're in that discovery phase and you're trying to find things out and identify the problem, remain curious, ask those questions, use the Socratic method. That first answer they give you, very superficial. Because why? They don't trust you yet. They don't know you. So you take that information using the Socratic method, you ask that question in a different way to get the next part of the puzzle, the next part of the question and the test and establish that level of trust so they can understand you know what you're talking about and you're there to help them. So you ask that second level question. Now they've put a little bit, I'll use the analogy, they put some meat on the bone. There's muscle on the bone. You're starting to understand their daily frustrations, but you still don't have that nerve ending. You still don't have the root cause of the problem. So that third level, that third question that you ask on the same topic, you're just drilling deeper. You're using your knowledge and your skills to extract from that customer their pain, what that problem is. And you want to understand it at that intimate level that, when you've had a raw nerve and someone just kind of smacks it for you, that's where you want to be, because that's where decisions are made. Decisions are emotional, right?
Sure.
Yes, they want to solve a business problem, but people make decisions based on emotion. So if you understand that emotion and you can harness that and you can leverage that to your advantage and show them how you can remove that person that wants to smack that nerve ending over and over and over again, you'll be the biggest hero in their life.
Great point. Great. Absolutely. Well, we're about out of time. I wanted to tell you so much. Thank you for doing this. A lot of perspective for our folks. I think one of the things that FM Corner does is a lot of people don't like to raise their hand and say, I don't know. They just don't. Especially a facility manager, I'm supposed to know everything and whatever, and you don't, and you learn all the time. But they don't want to raise their hand and ask it publicly. And sometimes just by listening to, typically not me, but the guests that I have on, of lessons and things that we've endured during our careers, out of that sometimes comes, hey, that's not a bad idea, or that's a good point. And they've listened to that, or they can write it down, and no one ever knows, how they got. And I think that's important, because people don't, I know as a facility manager, early on, I didn't want to say I didn't know. I got better at it to where I would, hey, I don't know. I want to go figure it out.
Right.
But people don't want to do that. They're expected to believe and know everything, and they don't. And that's what this does, kind of gives platform for people to speak about their careers, what they've done, and let others kind of learn from that just by listening. But I wanted to say thank you so much. I wish you all the success in the world and finding the perfect opportunity and, for your next adventure and what you want to do. So certainly appreciate the time, and thanks so much. That's our episode of FM Corner today. Again, brought to you by Windy City. Thanks for their support, and we will speak with you soon. Thank you very much, Scott. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Danny, so much, and thank Josh and Windy City as well. We appreciate what you're doing, and you hopefully you stick this out for a few more years, because you've got tremendous knowledge to share. Thank you, Danny.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.